He drew the snake venom from her thigh. What happened next left them stunned. Part 1. Small shuttle dropped through the thick purple clouds of Desert IV. Inside, Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison checked his uniform one more time. His hands were steady, but his heart was beating fast. This was the most important mission of his career. Sitting across from him was Dr. Lavra Bennett. She was the best xenobiology officer in the fleet. Her job was to study alien life forms, and today she would meet the most mysterious species in the known galaxy. The Cathari? You nervous? Jake asked her. Lavra looked up from her datapad. Her brown eyes met his. A little. The Cathari have never invited any species to their sacred ceremony before. We are the first humans they have ever allowed on their home world. Jake nodded. He had read all the reports. The Cathari were a serpentine species. They looked like giant snakes, some of them 20 feet long. They had arms that came out from their upper bodies, but below the waist, they were all coils and scales. Their civilization was over 10,000 years old. Their biotechnology was the most advanced in the galaxy. They could grow buildings from living tissue. They could cure diseases that killed millions on other worlds. They could even change their own bodies through genetic manipulation. But they were also cold, calculating. They did not believe in emotions. They did not believe in helping the weak. To them, only the strong deserved to survive. This was their way. This had always been their way. The shuttle broke through the clouds, and Jake saw the surface of Desert 4 for the first time. It was a jungle world. Massive trees stretched toward the sky, their leaves glowing with soft blue light. Strange creatures flew between the branches. Rivers of silver water cut through the green landscape, and there, in the middle of a clearing, was the Cathari delegation. The shuttle landed with a soft thump. Jake stood up and looked at Lavra. Ready? She took a deep breath. Ready. The door opened, and they stepped out onto alien soil. The heat hit Jake first. It was warm and wet, like walking into a steam room. The air smelled strange, like flowers and something else he could not name. All around them, the jungle made sounds. Clicks and whistles and low, rumbling calls from creatures hidden in the shadows. But Jake did not look at the jungle. He looked at the Cathari. There were at least 50 of them. They were arranged on raised platforms made of some kind of living wood. Their scales came in many colors: green, blue, gold, and deep red. They watched the two humans with eyes that did not blink. Their forked tongues flickered in and out. Tasting the air. In the center of the group was the largest Cathari Jake had ever seen. He was at least 25 feet long when fully stretched out. His scales were deep purple, almost black, and he wore robes made of something that seemed to move on its own. Living cloth, Jake realized. The Cathari could even make their clothes from living tissue. This was Sylveth, the High Arbiter, the leader of the Cathari people. Jake and Lavra walked forward and stopped at a respectful distance. Jake bowed his head slightly, the greeting they had been taught. High Arbiter Sylveth, Jake said. We are honored by your invitation. The people of Earth, thank you for this opportunity. Sylveth's tongue flickered. His voice was deep and had a hissing quality to it, but the translation implant in Jake's ear turned it into clear English. You are smaller than we expected, Sylveth said. Fragile, soft. We have studied your species for many years, but seeing you in person, we wonder why the Galactic Council speaks so highly of your kind. Jake kept his face calm. He had been warned that the Cathari were direct. They did not believe in polite words or gentle conversation. We have learned that survival is not always about size, Arbiter, Jake replied. Several of the Cathari made sounds that might have been laughter. Sylveth did not react. His black eyes stayed fixed on Jake. Perhaps, the High Arbiter said. We shall see. He raised one clawed hand and gestured toward the jungle behind him. You have been invited to witness the concordance ceremony. But first, you must walk the path of accord. It is tradition. All visitors must walk the path to prove they are worthy of standing among the Cathari. Lara stepped forward. We read about the path in our briefing materials. It goes through your sacred grove, where your ancestors first became intelligent beings. Sylvet's tongue flickered again. Jake was starting to understand that this was how they showed interest or approval. You have done your research, Sylvet said. Good. The path is not long. Perhaps 2 of your kilometers. But it is challenging. Many species have failed to complete it. What happens if we fail? Jake asked. Then you are not worthy, and you will leave our world. The Cathari do not associate with the unworthy. Jake looked at Lara. She gave him a small nod. They had come too far to turn back now. We accept, Jake said. Sylveth made a gesture, and 2 smaller Cathari slithered forward. They would serve as guides, leading the humans to the start of the path. As Jake and Lara followed the guides into the jungle, Jake felt the eyes of every Cathari on his back. They were watching, waiting. He had the feeling they expected the humans to fail. The path started at an ancient stone archway covered in glowing moss. Beyond the archway, the jungle grew thicker. The trees were older here, their trunks as wide as houses. Strange flowers grew everywhere, filling the air with sweet and dangerous smells. Stay on the path, one of the guides said. Do not touch anything. Do not speak to anything. Walk forward until you reach the end. Then the guides left, slithering back toward the clearing. Jake and Lara stood alone at the entrance to the sacred grove. Well, Lara said quietly. Here we go. They stepped through the archway together. The jungle closed around them like a living thing. The sounds of the Cathari delegation faded away. Now there were only the sounds of the grove. Water dripping from leaves. Insects buzzing in the shadows. The soft rustle of things moving in the undergrowth. The path was narrow, just wide enough for them to walk side by side. The ground was soft beneath their boots, covered in moss that glowed with a pale blue light. It was beautiful, Jake thought. Beautiful and terrifying. They walked in silence for 20 minutes. The jungle watched them. Jake could feel it. There were eyes everywhere, hidden in the darkness between the trees. He kept his hand near his sidearm, but he did not draw it. The Cathari had allowed them to keep their weapons, but using them in the sacred grove would probably end the mission instantly. Lara was scanning everything with her datapad. This ecosystem is incredible, she whispered. Some of these plants are engineered. The Cathari have been modifying this grove for thousands of years. Engineered for what? Jake asked. Before Lara could answer, she stumbled. Her foot caught on a root hidden beneath the moss. She fell forward with a cry of surprise. Jake reached out to catch her, but he was too slow. And then something moved in the shadows. It was fast. Faster than anything Jake had ever seen. A dark shape, long and thin, shooting out from the undergrowth like a thrown spear. It struck Laura's thigh before she even hit the ground. Fangs sinking deep into her flesh. Lara screamed. Jake drew his sidearm and fired. But the creature was already gone, vanishing back into the darkness. He dropped to his knees beside Lara, his heart pounding. Let me see, he said. Let me see the wound. Laura's face was pale. Her hands were shaking as she pulled aside the torn fabric of her uniform. The bite was deep. 2 puncture wounds, already swelling. Dark lines were spreading from the wound, tracing the path of her veins. Venom. Fast-acting Venom. Jake activated his communicator. This is Lieutenant Commander Morrison. Medical emergency. We need immediate extraction. Static. Nothing but static. He tried again. Command, do you copy? Medical emergency. Respond. More static. The thick canopy of the grove was blocking his signal. Or maybe the Cathari were blocking it. Either way, no help was coming. Jake looked up and saw them. The Cathari delegation had followed them. They were watching from the shadows, their eyes gleaming in the darkness. Silvas was there, his massive form coiled among the trees. "Help her," Jake demanded. "You have medicine. You have technology. Help her." Silvath's tongue flickered slowly. "The Grove Sentinel's venom is sacred. It determines worth. If your companion survives until dawn, she will have proven herself worthy. If she dies..." The High Arbiter's coils shifted. "Then she was never worthy of standing among us." Jake stared at him in disbelief. "You are going to let her die? Just to test her worthiness?" "This is our way," Silveth replied. "It has always been our way." Laura gripped Jake's arm. Her breathing was getting worse. The venom was spreading. "Jake," she whispered. "The shuttle. The medical kit. You could run back." Jake did the math in his head. 40 minutes to the shuttle. 40 minutes back. Lavra had maybe 20 minutes before the venom reached her heart. He was not going to leave her. He pulled his combat knife from his boot and looked at the wound. He had learned field medicine in a dozen war zones, on planets where proper equipment was a luxury. He knew what he had to do. The Cathari watched in silence as the human bent over his fallen companion. They had no idea what was about to happen. He drew the snake venom from her thigh. What happened next left him stunned. Part 2. Jake did not hesitate. Every second mattered now. He used his knife to make a small cut above the bite wound. It had to be precise. Too deep, and he would hit an artery. Too shallow, and it would not work. He had done this before, years ago, on a jungle planet called Verd 3. A young soldier had been bitten by something poisonous. Jake had saved his life that day using the same technique. Lara watched him with wide eyes. "What are you doing?" "Saving your life," Jake replied. "Hold still. This is going to hurt." He lowered his mouth to the wound and began to suck out the venom. The taste was horrible. Bitter and burning, like acid mixed with rotten meat. Jake pulled the poison into his mouth and spat it onto the sacred ground of the grove. Then he did it again and again. The Cathari, watching from the shadows, made sounds of disgust and confusion. Their tongues flickered rapidly, tasting the air, trying to understand what they were seeing. Silveth moved closer. His massive body slid through the undergrowth without making a sound. He watched Jake with those black, unblinking eyes. "What you are doing is pointless," the High Arbiter said. "The Sentinel's venom is designed to spread through the entire body within minutes. You cannot remove it all." Jake spat out another mouthful of venom and wiped his lips. They were already starting to burn. "Maybe not, but I can slow it down. And in doing so, you poison yourself." Silveth's tongue flickered. "The venom will damage your mouth, your throat, your stomach. You are shortening your own life to delay her death by hours at most. Then, I better work fast." Jake returned to his task. He sucked out more venom, spat it out, and repeated the process. His lips were swelling now. His tongue felt thick and strange. The poison was entering his own system, attacking his tissues. He could feel it burning its way through him. But he did not stop. Laura was crying. Tears ran down her cheeks as she watched him. "Jake, please. You are hurting yourself. You have to stop." "Not happening, Bennett." He managed a small smile despite the pain. "You still owe me 20 credits from that poker game last month. I am not letting you die before I collect." She laughed through her tears. It was a weak sound, but it was something. The Cathari continued to watch. More of them had gathered now, emerging from the jungle to witness this strange human behavior. They whispered to each other in their hissing language, too fast for the translation implants to follow. one of the younger Cathari, a female with bright green scales named Keltha, slithered forward. She was a junior diplomat, Jake remembered from the briefing. She was supposed to be one of the more open-minded members of their species. "I do not understand," Keltha said. Her voice was higher than Silva's, almost musical. "Why do you do this?" Jake did not stop working. He spoke between mouthfuls of venom. "Because she is my friend." Friend. Keltha tasted the word like it was something strange. "We know this word. It means a being you associate with for mutual benefit. But there is no benefit here. You are destroying yourself. That is not what friendship means to humans. Then, what does it mean?" Jake paused. He looked up at the young Cathari, his face pale and his lips blistered. "It means I would rather die than watch her die alone." Keltha stared at him for a long moment. Then she turned to Sylveth and spoke rapidly in Cathari. The High Arbiter listened but did not respond. Jake went back to work. The minutes passed slowly. Jake lost track of time. All he knew was the rhythm of his task. Suck out the venom. Spit it out. Check Laura's pulse. Repeat. His hands were shaking now. His vision was getting blurry. The poison was affecting his nervous system. He talked to Laura to keep her conscious. He told her about his childhood on a farm in Nebraska. His parents had grown corn and wheat on 500 acres of flat land. His sister Amy was 3 years younger than him. She had wanted to be a doctor, and now she worked at a hospital in Chicago. "She is terrible at cooking," Jake said, his words slightly slurred from his swollen lips. "Every Thanksgiving, she insists on making the turkey. Every Thanksgiving, it comes out dry as cardboard." Laura smiled weakly. "Tell me more." "I had a dog growing up. His name was Rusty. He was a golden retriever, dumb as a rock, but the sweetest animal you ever met. He used to sleep at the foot of my bed every night." Jake had to stop and spit out more venom. The dark lines on Laura's leg had stopped spreading, but they had not retreated. "When I retire from service, I'm going to get another dog. Maybe a German Shepherd this time." "I like German Shepherds," Laura whispered. "Then you can come visit. Meet the dog. We can sit on my porch and watch the sunset." "That sounds nice." An hour passed. Then Jake had vomited 3 times from the poison in his system. His body was trying to reject the toxins, but it was a losing battle. He could feel the venom working through him, attacking his cells, damaging his organs. He did not know how much time he had lost. Days? Weeks? Years? It did not matter. Laura was still alive. The Cathari had not moved. They watched in silence, recording everything with devices that floated in the air around them. To them, this was a fascinating study in alien behavior. A strange new data point in their understanding of the galaxy. But something was changing among them. Jake could see it in the way some of them shifted uneasily. He could hear it in their whispered conversations. What they were watching did not fit into their understanding of how the universe worked. Keltha broached again. This time, several other young Cathari came with her. "She is not your mate," Keltha said. It was not a question. "No," Jake replied. "She is not your offspring. She does not carry your genetic material. No. Then your sacrifice makes no sense." Keltha's tongue flickered in agitation. "Your genetic line will not continue through her. Your species will not benefit from her survival more than it would benefit from yours. By every measure we understand, you are choosing the wrong option." Jake looked at her with bloodshot eyes. "Among humans, we do not measure the value of a life by genetics. Then how do you measure it?" "We do not measure it at all. Every life has value. Every person deserves someone who will fight for them." The young Cathari stared at him. "Even strangers? Even enemies?" "Sometimes, yes." Keltha turned to her companions. They hissed at each other in rapid conversation. Then she turned back to Jake. Our oldest texts speak of a time before the Kethari became what we are now. A time when we were weak and survival depended on cooperation. Some of our scholars believe this is why we became intelligent in the first place. Because we worked together. She paused. But that was long ago. We evolved past such weakness. Maybe you evolved past something that was not weakness at all. Before Keltha could respond, Laura made a sound. Jake looked down at her instantly. Her eyes were closed, and her breathing had become shallow. Laura? Laura, stay with me. She did not respond. Jake checked her pulse. It was there, but weak. Very weak. The venom had done its damage. He had slowed it down, but he had not stopped it. She needs medicine, Jake said. He looked up at Sylveth, who had been watching the entire time without speaking. Please, I am not asking for myself. I am asking for her. She came here in good faith. She came here to learn about your people, to build a relationship between our species. Is this how the Kethari treat those who come in peace? Sylveth was silent for a long moment. His ancient eyes studied Jake with an intensity that was almost physical. You have poisoned yourself, the High Arbiter said finally. Your body is damaged. Your lifespan is shortened. And still you ask for her life, not your own. My life does not matter right now. Hers does. Why? Jake did not have an answer that the Kethari would understand. He did not have words that would translate across the vast gulf between their species. So he simply told the truth. Because she trusted me to keep her safe. And I will not let her down. Sylva's tongue flickered once. Twice. 3 times. Then he turned to his delegation and spoke in Kethari. His voice was sharp and commanding. The other Kethari erupted in protest. Jake could not understand their words, but he could read their body language. Many of them were angry. They lashed their tails and bared their fangs. Some pointed at the humans with obvious disgust, but Sylveth did not back down. He raised his voice, and his words cut through the chaos like a blade. One by one, the protesting Kethari fell silent. When the High Arbiter spoke again, his words were in English, so Jake could understand. Bring the sacred anti-venom. Summon the healers. Both humans will be treated. Jake felt his strength leave him. He slumped forward, barely catching himself before he fell on top of Laura. Thank you, he whispered. Sylveth looked down at him with those unreadable black eyes. Do not thank me yet, human. You have only survived the path. The true test is still to come. But Jake did not hear him. The venom had finally caught up with him, and darkness was pulling him down into unconsciousness. The last thing he saw was Keltha's face hovering over him. Her expression filled with something that looked almost like wonder. Then everything went black. He drew the snake venom from her thigh. What happened next left them stunned. Part 3. Jake woke up slowly. The first thing he noticed was that he was not dead. This was a pleasant surprise. The second thing he noticed was that he was floating. He opened his eyes and found himself suspended in some kind of liquid. It was warm and thick, like floating in honey. The liquid glowed with a soft green light, and he could feel it moving over his skin, tingling everywhere it touched. A healing tank, he realized. Kethari biotechnology. He tried to move and found that he could not. His body was wrapped in something. Membranes, maybe, or living bandages. They held him in place while the healing liquid did its work. Through the green glow, he could see the room beyond the tank. It was unlike any medical facility he had ever seen. The walls were alive. They pulsed with soft light and seemed to breathe. Strange tubes connected to the ceiling, carrying fluids that glowed in different colors. The air itself felt different here, cleaner, more alive. And there, in another tank across the room, was Laura. She was floating just like he was, her eyes closed, her face peaceful. The wound on her thigh was covered by something that looked like living moss. Even as Jake watched, he could see the damaged flesh slowly healing, knitting back together under the alien treatment. Relief flooded through him. She was alive. She was going to be okay. A Cathari entered the room. She was smaller than most of the ones Jake had seen, with scales the color of pale silver. She moved with careful precision, checking the tanks, adjusting controls, making notes on a device that seemed to be grown from the same living material as everything else. She noticed Jake was awake and slithered closer to his tank. "You are conscious earlier than expected," she said. Her voice was gentle, almost kind. "Your species is more resilient than our data suggested." "Where am I?" Jake's voice came out strange, distorted by the liquid. "The healing chamber beneath the grove of accord. I am Meshara. I am the healer assigned to your care." She studied a readout on the side of his tank. "Your companion is recovering well. The anti-venom was administered in time. She will have no permanent damage. And me?" Meshara's tongue flickered. For a moment, she did not answer. "You absorbed a significant amount of Grove Sentinel venom through your oral tissues. The damage is considerable. We can repair much of it, but not all." Jake closed his eyes. He had known this was a possibility. "How bad?" "Your lifespan has been shortened by approximately 3 of your years. Perhaps more. The venom has left traces in your system that will never fully clear. You may experience weakness, fatigue, and occasional pain for the rest of your life." 3 years. Jake thought about what 3 years meant. 3 years of sunsets on that porch he had imagined. 3 years of walks with the dog he wanted to get. 3 years of dinners with his sister, even if the turkey was always dry. "Worth it," he said quietly. Meshara tilted her head. "I do not understand that response. My friend is alive. That is worth 3 years. That is worth 30 years. The healer stared at him for a long moment. Then she made a sound that Jake could not interpret and returned to her work. Hours passed. Maybe days. Time was strange in the healing chamber. Jake drifted in and out of consciousness, his body slowly repairing itself under the care of Cathari biotechnology. Sometimes he heard voices outside the chamber. Sometimes he dreamed of Nebraska, of cornfields stretching to the horizon, of his mother calling him in for dinner. When he finally woke fully, the liquid in his tank was draining away. The membranes holding him in place dissolved, and he felt solid ground beneath his feet for the first time in what felt like forever. Meshara helped him out of the tank. His legs were weak, and he had to lean on her for support. She did not seem to mind. "Your companion woke several hours ago," Meshara said. "She has been asking for you." Jake looked across the room. Laura's tank was empty. "Where is she?" "In the recovery area." "I will take you to her." The recovery area was a smaller room connected to the main healing chamber. The walls here were softer, covered in something that looked like thick moss. It was comfortable, Jake realized. The Cathari had designed it for comfort. Lavra was sitting on a low bench when Jake entered. She looked tired but healthy. The color had returned to her face, and her eyes were bright. When she saw him, she stood up and crossed the room. Before Jake could say anything, she wrapped her arms around him and held on tight. "You stupid, wonderful, crazy man," she said into his shoulder. "You almost died. So did you. That was different. That was an accident. You chose to poison yourself." Jake pulled back and looked at her. "I would do it again." Lavra shook her head, but she was smiling through her tears. "I know. That is what makes it so frustrating." They sat together on the bench, side by side, not speaking. Words did not seem necessary. They were alive. They were together. For now, that was enough. The door opened, and Sylveth entered. The High Arbiter had to fold his massive body to fit through the doorway. His purple scales gleamed in the soft light of the recovery room. He looked at the two humans with an expression Jake could not read. "You are both recovering," Sylveth observed. "Good. The healers tell me you will be able to attend the concordance ceremony tomorrow." Jake stood up, ignoring the weakness in his legs. "We are grateful for the healing, Arbiter." "We did not expect it." "No, you did not." Sylveth's tongue flickered slowly. "I have been alive for 300 of your years. In that time, I have observed many species. I have watched the strong consume the weak. I have watched civilizations rise and fall. I thought I understood how the galaxy worked." He paused, his black eyes fixed on Jake. "Then I watched you poison yourself to save a being who shares no genetic connection with you. I watched you choose certain harm to yourself for uncertain benefit to another. I have been trying to understand this for the past 2 days. I have consulted our oldest texts, our most learned scholars. None of them can explain what you did." Jake did not know what to say. He had not been trying to prove anything. He had just been trying to save his friend. "Among humans," Jake said finally, "we have a word for it. We call it love. Not romantic love, although that exists too, but a deeper kind. Love for our friends, our families, even strangers we have never met. It makes us do things that do not make logical sense. Love." Sylveth tasted the word. "We have studied this concept. We dismissed it as weakness, as a primitive emotion that intelligent beings should evolve past. Maybe love is not weakness," Lavra said quietly. "Maybe it is the opposite." The High Arbiter turned his gaze to her. "Explain." Lavra took a deep breath. She was still weak, but her voice was steady. "The Githari are strong because you compete. You eliminate the weak and keep the strong. But that approach has limits. You can only grow so powerful alone. Humans are strong because we cooperate. We work together, support each other, sacrifice for each other. That is how we survived on our home world. That is how we spread across the stars. You suggest that cooperation is more effective than competition. I suggest they are both effective in different ways. But cooperation requires trust. And trust requires love, or something like it. You have to believe that others will sacrifice for you, just as you would sacrifice for them." Sylveth was silent for a long time. His coils shifted slowly, a sign of deep thought. "The Githari have never trusted another species," he said finally. "We have never trusted each other, not truly. Our society is built on power and fear. The strong rule and the weak obey." He paused. "But perhaps that is why we have never moved beyond a certain point. We have great technology, great power, but we have no friends. No allies who would sacrifice for us as you sacrificed for her." Jake felt something shift in the room. The air itself seemed to change. He was witnessing something important, he realized. A moment that might change the relationship between two species forever. "What are you saying, Arbiter?" Jake asked. Sylva's tongue flickered. "I am saying that I have much to think about. I am saying that what I witnessed in the grove has challenged everything I believed about strength and weakness." He turned toward the door. "Rest tonight. Tomorrow, you will attend the concordance. And perhaps for the first time in our history, the Githari will learn something from another species." He left without another word. Jake and Laura sat in silence, processing what had just happened. Did we just change an entire civilization? Laura asked finally. Jake shook his head slowly. "I do not know. But something changed, I think. Something important." Laura leaned her head against his shoulder. "All because you sucked snake venom out of my leg. It seemed like the right thing to do at the time." She laughed softly. "Thank you, Jake, for saving my life. Thank you for not dying." They sat together in the soft light of the recovery room. Two small humans on an alien world, waiting to see what tomorrow would bring. Outside, the twin moons of HFY rose into the purple sky, casting silver light over the ancient grove where everything had changed. He drew the snake venom from her thigh. What happened next left them stunned. Part 4. The morning came slowly on HFY. The purple sky turned lighter, then shifted to a deep orange as the sun rose over the jungle. Strange birds called from the trees, their songs echoing through the humid air. Jake stood at the window of the guest chamber, watching the world wake up. His body still ached from the venom damage, and he knew it would ache for the rest of his life. But he was alive. Lara was alive. In the end, that was what mattered. Behind him, the door opened. Lara entered, dressed in a clean uniform that the Cathari had provided. She looked better than she had the day before. The color had fully returned to her face, and she moved without any sign of pain. "The healers want to examine you one more time before the ceremony," she said. "They want to make sure you are stable enough to attend." Jake turned from the window. "I am fine. You have venom damage throughout your body." "That is not fine. It is fine enough." He managed a small smile. "I did not come all this way to miss the big show." Lara shook her head but did not argue. She knew him well enough to know that arguing would be pointless. They walked together through the living corridors of the Cathari complex. The walls pulsed gently around them, and soft lights guided their path. Everywhere they went, Cathari stopped to watch them. Word had spread about what had happened in the grove. The humans were now famous or infamous, depending on who you asked. Meshar met them at the entrance to the medical wing. She examined Jake quickly, checking his vital signs with devices that seemed to grow from her own hands. "Your condition is stable," she said finally. "But I must warn you, the venom damage is permanent. You will never fully recover." "I know." Meshar's tongue flickered. "I have been a healer for 60 years. I have treated thousands of patients. I have never seen a being willingly accept such harm for the sake of another." She paused. "I am still trying to understand it." "Maybe some things cannot be understood," Jake replied. "Maybe they can only be felt." The healer stared at him for a long moment. Then she did something unexpected. She reached out with one clawed hand and touched his arm gently. "Perhaps you are right," she said softly. "Perhaps the Cathari have forgotten how to feel." She turned away before Jake could respond. The concordance chamber was enormous. It was carved from living rock. Deep beneath the surface of HFY, bioluminescent plants covered every surface, filling the space with soft blue and green light. Thousands of Cathari filled the chamber, arranged on terraced platforms that rose toward the high ceiling. Their scales caught the light, creating a sea of shifting colors. At the center of the chamber was a raised platform made of crystal. This was where the most important ceremonies took place. This was where history was made. Jake and Lara were led to a small platform near the front. They were the only non-Cathari in the entire chamber. Every eye was on them. Sylveth rose from his position among the elders. His massive form uncoiled, and he moved to the crystal platform with slow dignity. When he spoke, his voice carried to every corner of the chamber. "The concordance is called to witness a matter of great importance," Sylveth announced. "For the first time in 6,000 years, we gather not to celebrate our own achievements, but to consider something we have observed in others." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. This was not normal. This was not how concordance ceremonies worked. Sylveth raised one clawed hand, and silence fell. 2 days ago, 2 humans walked the path of accord. One of them was bitten by a grove sentinel. According to our traditions, she should have been left to live or die based on her own strength. This is the way of the Cathari. This has always been our way. He paused, letting the words sink in. But the other human did something we did not expect. He did something that contradicts everything we believe about survival and strength. He chose to poison himself to save his companion. He chose certain harm to himself for uncertain benefit to another. The murmurs grew louder. Some of the HFY were clearly disturbed by this. Others leaned forward with curiosity. I have spent the past 2 days studying this event, Sylveth continued. I have consulted our oldest texts, our wisest scholars. I have meditated in the grove of ancestors, seeking guidance from those who came before us. And I have reached a conclusion that troubles me deeply. The chamber fell completely silent. We have been wrong. The reaction was immediate. Some HFY hissed in anger. Others rose from their platforms in protest. The chamber erupted in chaos. Sylveth waited calmly for the noise to die down. When it did not, he raised his voice. Silence. The command echoed through the chamber like thunder. Every HFY fell quiet instantly. I did not say we have been entirely wrong, Sylveth said, his voice lower now. Our focus on strength has served us well. We have built an empire spanning 17 star systems. We have developed technology that other species can only dream of. We have survived while lesser civilizations have fallen. He turned to look at Jake and Lavra. But we have also stagnated. For 2,000 years, our territory has not grown. Our technology has not significantly advanced. Our society has remained frozen in place. His tongue flickered. I believe I now understand why. He moved closer to the two humans. The chamber watched in breathless silence. The HFY are strong individually, but we are weak together. We do not trust each other. We do not sacrifice for each other. We do not love each other. The words seemed strange coming from his mouth, but he said it clearly. And because of this, we have reached the limits of what individual strength can achieve. One of the elder HFY rose from his platform. His scales were gray with age, and his voice cracked when he spoke. You speak of love as if it were a virtue, High Arbiter. But love is weakness. It makes beings do irrational things. It clouds judgment. It leads to poor decisions. Does it? Sylveth turned to face the elder. This human's love for his companion led him to endure tremendous suffering. It led him to sacrifice years of his own life. Was that a poor decision? He should have let her die and preserved himself. That would have been the rational choice. Perhaps. But consider this. Sylveth's voice took on a new intensity. The Galactic Council has welcomed humans with open arms. They are given seats of honor, trading rights, access to technologies that took other species millennia to earn. Do you know why? The elder did not answer. Because humans help others. When the Harkin Plague struck Outpost 7, human volunteers flew into a quarantine zone to deliver medicine. They knew they might die. They went anyway. When the asteroid struck Desha Prime, human ships were first on scene for rescue operations. They had no treaties with the Deshans. They had no reason to help. They helped anyway. Sylveth swept his gaze across the chamber. The galaxy trusts humans because humans have proven they can be trusted. They have proven they will sacrifice for others. And that trust has given them power that we, with all our strength, have never achieved. Silence. Complete and total silence. I am not suggesting we become like humans, Sylveth said. We are HFY. We will always be HFY. But perhaps we can learn from them. Perhaps we can find a balance between our individual strength and their collective spirit. He turned back to Jake and Laura. Lieutenant Commander Morrison, Dr. Bent, you came here as guests. You walked the path of accord and faced its trials with courage. But more than that, you showed us something we had forgotten. You showed us that there is strength in sacrifice, power in love, wisdom in caring for others. Jake did not know what to say. He had not expected any of this. He had just been trying to save his friend. On behalf of the Cathari people, Sylveth continued, I offer you our gratitude. And I offer your species something we have never offered any other. He made a gesture, and 2 attendants brought forward a crystalline case. Inside was a document written in flowing Cathari script. This is a proposal for full partnership between the Cathari Empire and the Human Federation. Access to our biotechnology, our medical advances, our genetic research, everything we have developed over 10,000 years, shared freely with your people. Lavra gasped softly beside Jake. But there is something else, Sylveth said. Something more important than technology. He looked directly at Jake, and for the first time, Jake saw something other than cold calculation in those ancient eyes. He saw curiosity. He saw humility. He saw hope. We request that humans teach us, Sylveth said. Teach us how to trust, how to sacrifice, how to love. His tongue flickered slowly. Teach us how to be more than we are. The chamber was absolutely still. Jake looked at Lara. She looked back at him. Neither of them had words for this moment. Finally, Jake stepped forward. His legs were still weak from the venom damage, but his voice was strong. The Cathari have much to teach humanity as well, he said. Your technology, your history, your understanding of the universe. Perhaps the best partnerships are the ones where both sides learn from each other. Sylveth's tongue flickered rapidly. It was the closest Jake had ever seen to a Cathari smile. Then we are agreed, the High Arbiter said. Let the record show that on this day, the Cathari and the humans have formed a bond unlike any in our history. Not through conquest, not through treaties, but through understanding. He raised his voice so the entire chamber could hear. Let the sea. He drew the snake venom from her thigh. What happened next left them stunned. 5 years had passed since the concordance ceremony. Jake stood on the observation deck of the research station orbiting HFY. Below him, the jungle world turned slowly, its purple clouds swirling in patterns that still seemed alien even after all this time. Behind him, the station hummed with activity. Human scientists worked alongside Cathari researchers, sharing knowledge, sharing ideas, sharing lives. The Human-Cathari partnership, as it had come to be known, had changed everything. Cathari biotechnology had cured diseases that had plagued humanity for centuries. Cancer, Alzheimer's, genetic disorders that had seemed impossible to fix. All of them had fallen before the combined wisdom of 2 species working together. Millions of lives had been saved. Millions more would be saved in the years to come. In return, humans had taught the Cathari something far more valuable than technology. They had taught them how to connect, how to trust, how to build relationships that were not based on power or fear. The first Cathari friendship circles had seemed strange at first. Groups of the serpentine beings gathering to share experiences, to support each other, to form bonds that had nothing to do with genetics or survival advantage. Many of the older Cathari had dismissed these circles as foolish, human influence, but the younger generation had embraced them. They had discovered something their ancestors had forgotten. Life was better when you were not alone. The door behind Jake opened, and Lavra walked onto the observation deck. She was older now, her hair showing the first touches of gray, but her eyes were still bright, still curious, still full of the wonder that had made her the best xenobiologist in the fleet. There you are, she said. The ceremony is starting in an hour. You should be getting ready. Jake smiled. I was just thinking. About what? About how strange the universe is. 5 years ago, I was just a lieutenant commander on a diplomatic mission. Now, I am about to give a speech at the 10th anniversary celebration of the partnership. Lavra came to stand beside him, looking down at the planet below. You know they named a holiday after you, right? On HFY, They call it Morrison Day, the day the humans taught the Kethari how to love. Jake laughed. That is embarrassing. It is accurate. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the clouds move across the face of the alien world. Do you ever think about that night in the grove? Laura asked. All the time. Do you regret it? The Venom damage, I mean. The years you lost. Jake turned to look at her. She was still his closest friend, even after all these years. Their bond had only grown stronger since Thesser 4. They had seen each other through triumphs and tragedies, through moments of joy and periods of grief. She had been there when his sister Amy died in a transport accident. He had been there when she lost her father to age. They had held each other up when the weight of the galaxy seemed too heavy to bear. Not for a second, he said. I would do it again. 100 times. Laura smiled. It was a soft smile, full of understanding. I know you would. That is what makes you who you are. Another door opened, and a young Kethari slithered onto the observation deck. Her scales were bright green, and she wore a ceremonial robe that marked her as a member of the diplomatic corps. Ambassador Morrison, she said. Ambassador Bennett. The delegates are gathering. High Arbiter Sylveth requests your presence. Jake nodded. Thank you, Keltha. We will be there shortly. Keltha, the young diplomat who had questioned Jake in the grove all those years ago. She was an ambassador now, one of the leaders of the movement to strengthen ties between the two species. She had become a friend. As much as any Kethari could be a friend to a human. She paused at the door and turned back. Ambassador Morrison, I never properly thanked you. Thanked me? For what? For showing me that there was another way to live. Her tongue flickered slowly. Before I met you, I believed that strength meant standing alone. That caring for others was weakness. You taught me differently. You taught all of us differently. Jake did not know what to say. He had never gotten used to the gratitude. He had just done what seemed right at the time. Keltha left, and Jake and Laura made their way to the ceremony hall. The hall was packed with beings from a dozen different species. Humans, Kethari, and representatives from the Galactic Council had all gathered to celebrate 10 years of partnership. The air buzzed with conversation in 100 different languages, all blending together into a symphony of interstellar cooperation. Sylveth waited at the central platform. The High Arbiter had aged in the past 5 years. His scales had dulled, and he moved more slowly than before. But his mind was still sharp, and his eyes still held that penetrating intelligence that had made him the leader of his people. Lieutenant Commander Morrison, he said. Or should I say Ambassador Morrison? It is good to see you again. Jake clasped the Arbiter's outstretched hand. The gesture would have been unthinkable 5 years ago. Kethari did not touch outsiders. But things had changed. It is good to see you too, old friend, Jake replied. Sylveth's tongue flickered. Old friend. I still find it strange that those words bring me comfort rather than disgust. He paused. When you are ready, the assembly is waiting for your speech. Jake looked out at the gathered crowd. Thousands of beings, all watching him. All waiting to hear what he had to say. He thought about the night in the grove. About the venom burning through his body. About Laura's pale face and weak pulse. About the choice he had made without hesitation. He had not known then that his actions would reshape relations between two civilizations. He had not known that a single act of desperation would become a symbol for a new way of thinking. He had just been trying to save his friend. Maybe that was the point. Jake stepped onto the platform and faced the assembly. 10 years ago, he began. I made a choice. It was not a complicated choice. It was not a strategic choice. My friend was dying, and I did everything I could to save her. That is all. The hall was silent, every being listening. I did not do it to prove a point about humanity. I did not do it to teach the Kethari a lesson. I did it because that is what you do for the people you care about. You sacrifice. You suffer. You put their needs ahead of your own. Not because it makes logical sense, but because it feels right. He looked at Laura, standing at the edge of the platform. She smiled at him. The partnership between humans and Kethari has achieved incredible things. We have cured diseases, explored new worlds, pushed the boundaries of what is possible. But I believe the greatest achievement is simpler than any of that. We have learned to care for each other. We have learned that strength and compassion are not opposites. They are two sides of the same coin. He paused, gathering his thoughts. There is a saying among humans. We call it the golden rule. Treat others the way you want to be treated. It sounds simple, but it is actually very hard. It requires you to see others as equal to yourself. It requires empathy, understanding, and yes, love. Some of the Kethari in the audience shifted uncomfortably. The words still made many of them uneasy, but they did not look away. I do not know what the future holds for our species. I do not know what challenges we will face, what enemies we will confront, what obstacles we will overcome. But I do know this. As long as we face them together, we will be stronger than any of us could be alone. He raised his voice so it carried to every corner of the hall. 10 years ago, I drew snake venom from my friend's thigh. What happened next left everyone stunned. A dying woman lived. An ancient civilization changed. Two species found common ground across a gulf of stars. And all of it started with one simple choice: to put someone else's life ahead of my own. Jake stepped back from the platform. Let that be the lesson we carry forward. Let that be the foundation of everything we build. Not technology, not treaties, not power, but love. Simple, stubborn, irrational love. The hall was silent for a long moment. Then Sylvus began to sway, the ancient gesture of approval. And one by one, every Kethari in the hall joined him. A sea of scales moving in rhythm, thousands of beings united in a single motion. The humans began to clap. The sound mixed with the swaying Kethari, creating something new, something beautiful, something that had never existed before. Jake felt Laura's hand find his. He squeezed it gently. They had come so far. They had changed so much. And it had all started with a snake bite and a desperate choice in a dark grove. As he looked out at the assembled beings, human and Kethari standing side by side, Jake knew that this was only the beginning. The galaxy was vast, and there were countless species who still believed that strength meant standing alone. Species who had forgotten or never learned the power of compassion. They would teach them. Together. One act of love at a time. The end.